Well, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to the diDNA Dialogue. My name's Josh, and today we have Andrew Barron with Pubmatic, who is currently the SVP of Marketplace and Addressability over there. Andrew, to kick us off, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and background in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us today, Josh. Pubmatic, as you know, is an SSP. What that means is we want to be a supply source that delivers the highest ROI back to advertisers and essentially helps them in making good supply selection choices. And so my role within Pubmatic is about creating that liquidity. So, when we think of marketplace and we think of addressability, we're talking about like creating a lot of beneficial transactions to advertisers. To be more specific, that's being really good at generating high ROI advertising sales.
Right.
And so when we do that for advertisers, then the publishers we work with get more revenue. So that's kind of been our strategy for quite some time. So me in particular, as I mentioned, like I'm kind of sitting at this point of liquidity for the company. Marketplace is about data science, team of ML engineers that kind of build and manage a set of algorithms that kind of govern our auction. And what's becoming increasingly important, and probably where we're going to focus this conversation on, is this concept of addressability. So, as you know, third-party cookie has been under threat. IDFA is going away. Lots of the standards that we as an industry use to conduct business in the past are now having to change. And so our approach to addressability is about allowing advertisers to find their audiences or target on a contextual basis in the absence of these standards that are quickly going away.
Right. Okay. And it almost seems obvious in terms of defining Pubmatic as an SSP, but where would you think you fit? So Pubmatic in the ad ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. SSPs have largely been a tool for publishers to access programmatic revenue. So when we think of programmatic revenue, it's what we do together, right? It's RTV driven dollars, right?
Right.
So what we've done is basically set up exchanges for publishers to plug into a bunch of demand sources. Those demand sources largely called DSPs. And for a long time, a lot of SSPs were very focused on driving more yield for publishers. What that resulted in was a lot of short-term gains. And I think the approach that Pubmatic has taken, and we've benefited greatly from in the last few years, is to be the SSP of choice. So that means for the publishers we work with, the best way buyers can find those is through Pubmatic. And so that has helped in the context of header bidding and a lot of the recent trends that have surfaced in the industry, like SPO, which is largely a function of header bidding. And so our role is to do exactly that, to help advertisers find more ROI and thus deliver outsized revenue back to publishers over a long term.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't want to jump too far ahead in terms of addressability, but because you brought that up and especially that being your main role, what do you think the biggest changes in that addressability landscape has meant for really Pubmatic as a whole, and then also the customers that you would call your customers at Pubmatic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, a lot of what's happening in the industry, a lot of the announcements, which I kind of bucket into like self-regulation or external regulation, like government announcements. So GDPR would be one more of like actual regulation. Self-regulation would be more like announcements from Apple and Google or other AdTech providers, the IAB. And all these things are intended to get ahead of a rising concern amongst internet users about privacy. So users want to feel comfortable that the data that they choose to share or don't choose to share is being protected accordingly. And so implications around there at a high level are really just, explicit consent. Like, how do we get a better understanding of how my data is being used, and how can I be crystal clear in which data does or doesn't get used?
Yeah. Okay.
So that has been kind of the North Star, I think, for a lot of what we've seen around us in the way of addressability. And so what that means for AdTech is that the third-party cookie doesn't necessarily meet all of that criteria, or IDFA, the device ID within the mobile environment,
Right.
has created questions among consumers. So that means there's quite a big opportunity for all of us to change the way we conduct business. So these standards, while helpful in kind of delivering advertiser outcomes and publisher revenue, have largely been suboptimal for consumers. So quite a big opportunity to deliver a better overall internet experience back to consumers. So now, more of a near-term implication is that a lot of companies have a lot of economic interest in seeing this transition be very successful. You hear in Facebook's earnings announcements the implication of IDFA, et cetera. I mean, so
Yeah.
that's just kind of like an obvious point of the dollars at stake here, and the interest of companies. So pubmatic, we've taken the approach that we want to be at the bleeding edge of this. We kind of defined a few problems that we want to solve specifically, which we can get to in a bit. But we see this as an opportunity to be a leader here. And that means both a thought leader, a place of experimentation, and ultimately we think we'll come out stronger for it at the end of this transition.
Yeah. That's perfect. I think that's an excellent segue into what you had already mentioned. So publisher revenue generation, and really the ad industry as a whole. You hit on a couple topics there, but I'd love to hear what you would want to share in terms of topics for those publishers that are listening, specifically to revenue generation. And then if the information or topic would be different for the ad industry as a whole, because we are talking about two different, I guess, clients or customers, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So great point. Talking about kind of like the two different vested interests here. And so what I'll do is I'll start with the buyers. What we've seen today,
Cool.
kind of the progress we've made with our buyers, and what that means for publishers.
Yes.
So so basically, what's happening right now is buyers are starting to experiment with alternatives to the third-party cookie. And so we kind of think about that, or call that broadly, like alternative IDs, new IDs. The types of IDs that have been most successful are all kind of like first-party data. So it's hashed emails, authenticated users, and those have kind of like quickly come to the top, and like, all right, let me start testing with that. Additionally, there are a set of IDs that are helpful for advertisers to scale up their addressability beyond just the subset of internet users that log in with their email, and so that can come in the form of segments. So create segments based off of standard segments that can get passed across many URLs. Use of first-party cookies in the publisher's environment, syncing up offline to clean rooms. A lot of other ways to make use of first-party data at a bit more scale, but maybe not necessarily across sites. And then lastly, there is kind of probabilistic or modeled IDs out there. So, I think this is kind of a new area for the industry as a whole, and there's a lot to play out there. So that's kind of maybe a broad overview of what's being tested. And so what that means for a publisher is there are dollars to be made today based off of this experimentation. One, a lot of these IDs have baked in demand. So buyers themselves are creating their own IDs. You've seen Trade Desk release Unified ID. You've seen Critteo's ID. There is PubCommon ID, which is like largely led by percent, et cetera. So a lot of these IDs come with some baked in demand, and that's in addition to all of the experimentation that's happening at the advertiser and agency level across the set of IDs I just mentioned. So what this means is a lot of complexity for publishers. And so a publisher's like, great, you're testing. That means potential for more revenue.
Right.
How do I play ball?
Right.
So that's kind of a specific problem. One of the specific problems that PubMatic itself has chose to lead the way with. And the way we've done that is said like, hey, we can make it super simple for a publisher to make a one-time like technical investment that's very small that will remove all future biz dev duplicative technical costs for working with this growingly complex landscape of IDs. That product is called Identity Hub. So basically, we create a module to access all the IDs that are available through Prebid. And so think of it as a wrapper for IDs.
Yeah.
And it's allowed publishers to dip their toes into the water of ID at very low impact and start to develop an identity strategy. And so what we've then seen as a result of that is because the value proposition is so high to publishers, we've seen massive adoption. And because of that, a lot of the ID partners we work with, the IDs themselves, I named a few before, others include like LiveRamp, et cetera, have gained massive traction across the internet as a result of our publisher penetration. So with hundreds of publishers adopting these IDs, it's very easy for them to start building a better graph and having a better view into the internet population, which in turn helps them create stronger value propositions back to buyers. So hopefully that kind of like gave you some kind of picture of how buy-side publisher motivation comes together around this kind of experimentation happening at this point in time.
Yeah, for sure. I loved the analogy on basically it's similar to a header biddle wrapper, but for identity. And I really like to hear that because I think that actually is one of the main reasons that we're partnered right now in diDNA and pubmatic is you guys are trying to remove the complexity for a lot of these publishers on identity. It's a new path that everybody's going down, and really pubmatic and a couple other groups are really tip of the spear here. So my question would be in terms of a partnership with somebody like us in diDNA, because we focus heavily on the publisher side, what was the big value for pubmatic and you to join up with us and partner and walk down this path together?
Yeah, exactly. So I think of it in two ways. So the value, so first of all, if we can make your life easier, great. If we can help your publishers access all these IDs that bring incremental demand, within Safari and Firefox today, where there's no third-party cookies, even better. We can help all these businesses. And then what comes back in return is that with more scale, IDs become more beneficial to buyers. And then I'd say even one level beyond that is now we're in a position to start packaging media. And so when we talk about addressability is beyond just kind of like sticking an ID in the bid request. It's describing audiences well so that buyers can continue using all the targeting that they've grown accustomed to.
Yeah.
And so we can now create audience packages for buyers based on what they want with these alternative IDs. And so that's where we've brought to market a product called Audience Encore, which is a way for us to work with data partners who build segments on top of the IDs that we've created great penetration for.
Excellent. And I think a lot of people, I think in the industry as a whole, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think programmatic used to be much more of a approach it for your remnant inventory, your backfill. And it's changing, and it has changed to where it's more acceptable as a total ad strategy. So what you're saying is using this Audience Encore and Identity Hub is essentially allowing you to package up the stuff that you've seen on your programmatic side and turn it around and making it a more profitable direct campaign, right?
That's exactly right. So I think from going back to the publisher's perspective here, one of the big opportunities that this wave brings about is it has increased the value of first-party data. And so that's music to a publisher's ear, where they've been like, I've had all this data, how do I make use of it? I've got these super valuable assets. And what that means is like, all right, empower your sales team, like create packages that are desirable for the ads, for the buy side, based off of your first party data. And so there's a lot of exciting developments on this way, going down this path. You can use first party keys and describe them in these like standard IAB taxonomical ways that will help buyers buy at scale. And if you're big enough, you can create specific packages for yourself that, attract buyers themselves. So that can happen in one-to-one deals or one.
Right. I love it. It's a focus on the holistic ad strategy as a whole. And it's much more than identity, which is really cool to hear that, because I think that's exactly what publishers are looking for, as you stated.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Since we're talking about publishers and we're starting to go into that path right there, could you share some advice and tips for, I think, publishers navigating the ad industry right now, and keeping in mind that many different sizes. There's people that only see 5 million page views in a month, and there's other groups that have multiple properties and are in the 100 million page view category. So what kind of advice do you have for those publishers watching today?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think the picture you just painted shows why there's going to be all these identity solutions. This complexity of identity solutions will exist for the foreseeable future. So I think the point that I've always made to the publisher side is experimentation at this stage is key. And the focus on experimentation shouldn't change with announcements. So as, say, like Google says, okay, we're delaying the third-party cookie transition by like 6 months to a year. Now, let's take a step back as an industry. We tend to overreact to large announcements, right?
Right.
I would say sometimes we underreact and we wait till the very last minute, and then like when we hear a new announcement, we can overreact to something else. So, does this actually change anything? When we started this journey, we said, okay, we need to reinvent the way we do business in the best interest of the internet user. And Google's announcement of 6 to 12 months doesn't really change that thesis, So I think we all still believe that there's a big opportunity, and this has like very big seismic impacts.
Right.
So we were just given more time. So continue down the experimentation. Pubmatic, we're definitely doing that. We're not slowing anything down, and we'd encourage the rest of the industry to do the same.
Right.
And so what that means is publishers can adopt more IDs. They can create new packages, try new data partners that are moving from third-party cookie-based segments to alternative ID-based segments, and get involved with pre-bid working groups. And that may all sound pretty daunting for a small publisher, to your point, that publishers come in many sizes, which is all the more reason to work with tech companies who can give you access to this kind of roadmap of innovation. Like we are involved with all these different initiatives, spinning up POCs that allow publishers to participate in. So taking the hand of a tech provider in a time of transition seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And you bringing up that pre-bid working group, we're actually on one of those task force as diDNA. And it's funny you mentioned the how daunting it can be, because some of the publishers on that group, I think, are a little larger and a little more knowledgeable in some of the things that are coming down the pipe right now. So for the publishers, that does seem really daunting too. And even the guys that are on that task force already, how do they come find you? How do they come find you? How do they connect with Pubmatic? What's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, so contact us. There's a form on the Pubmatic website. Easiest way, message goes straight to us, and we'll reach out right away.
Excellent. Sounds good. Well, everybody who's
pubmatic.com.
and .com. Don't forget the pubmatic.com. Yes. Everybody who's watching today, thank you for joining the Data Dialogue. We'll go ahead and post the Pubmatic website down in the description below. If you have comments, questions, anything along those lines, go ahead and then leave them below as well. If you have any thoughts on who else should be on the Data Dialogue, let us know and we'll try to reach out and get them on the show. Andrew, thank you for jumping on and sharing all of your insight and being super transparent for all of our publishers out there.
A lot of fun, Josh. Thanks for having me.